Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, a retired librarian turned homeschool mom. And in this video, we're going to be looking at Pocahontas. So this is a fictional book, more of it's kind of biography-like. So it's written by Joseph Bruchac. I'm mispronouncing his name. It will be in the comments. I'm covering most of his books here for November of 2022. This is being filmed in February. So this is an interesting book. I don't have a physical copy. I read it in ebook from my library. It is available in physical copy. My library doesn't have a physical copy. So this is an interesting book. So what he does in this book, this just tells about the initial meeting between Captain John Smith and Pocahontas. So that it's a snapshot in time during roughly about this 1-2 year period. So it does something very interesting. It shows both her point of view and his. So now from the back of the book, the author mentioned that he gained pretty much everything for the John Smith chapters was gained from his own writings. So he just did a combination of stuff that he got from the writings. And in the beginning of each one, he basically presented some sort of writing from that time period. So that's where all his information comes from, at least for the John Smith chapters. And then, of course, the Pocahontas chapters are probably just a mixture of information. It's hard to get accurate information on a Native American woman living in this time, particularly even this kind of interesting legendary figure that Pocahontas was. Now, during this time, she was a preteen. She was about 11 years old, they're guessing. They're not even sure of her name exactly. So what she was the one of the favored daughters of the current chief who had brought several warring tribes together. So, and the English viewed him as an emperor. They thought of her as a princess. She's very clear, at least in her chapters, that she's not a princess. She, at one point in time, she explains that she's not in line to inherit anything. When her father dies, his brothers take over. And she just becomes a member of the tribe and possibly just a member of their family. Her mother is also dead in this iteration. I don't think they're sure from the Wikipedia article how her mother actually died. Some say in childbirth, some say in other situations. In this story, she's killed running away from a different tribe during a raid, and by running into the river, she meant to swim to get away because she didn't want to be captured. They killed her by arrow, with an arrow to the back kind of thing. So that's what Pocahontas explains. She remembers her mother loosely, but she also explains that her mother wouldn't have been part of her life anyway. So just because she would have, after Pocahontas's birth, she would have gone back to her own family. So that's just kind of the way it is, and that is confirmed by some of what I read of what is common of this specific, what we know of this specific tribe, which yes, does in fact exist in Virginia. They are recognized in Virginia to this day. It is very interesting to read because you read a lot of the stuff that happened before John Smith and their interaction, because it's literally the later chapters where they interact, because she has no interaction with him until eventually he's captured by her people and brought to her village. So you learn about how she goes about her world, how they view the white man, which I think one of my funniest things was, and which, I mean, if you think about it, it's true. The Native Americans washed in the river, so they were clean, as opposed to the Englishmen who, at this time period, it's the 1600s, they weren't really bathing, and they were hairy. And they wore all these clothes. So it's very interesting how to basically describe them, which essentially was true. They were hairy, they smelled, and they were covered in bugs. Face it, they were hairy, they smelled, and they were covered in bugs. Because again, they didn't really wash. They didn't really clean themselves. So yeah, they were hairy and smelly, and there were no women at the first, when they were coming together. So the first Jamestown plantation kind of thing. And so the native people thought they were funny. It's like, one, you're not going to grow anything here. Two, women are the ones who do the farming. You don't understand this. You're very, very stupid. to them, which again would make sense. One, the Englishmen were not very good at farming in the beginning. They were crappy at it. They didn't know what the heck they were doing. They were starving to death, and it does go over this. It goes over into how they died a lot. It goes over into some of the politics of how John Smith interacted with their people and how a lot of people died. How they kicked out their elected president because he was being nasty and he was hoarding things and he was allowing people to die because he became very, very selfish. It talks about how in the beginning John Smith was not favored on their ship. He had gotten into trouble in a previous area and being accused of mutiny. And so there was other issues going on, but he had military experience, which saved him. And he slowly got free and was more a part of the community, eventually became one of the higher members of the council. And that's along with John, I think Radcliffe was the name of the person they eventually elected, who turned out to have a different name. So it's very interesting to see his chapters, which again, most of this is whether it's probably true. Again, these are his accounts. So they're at least coming from John Smith's direct accounts. So we at least know this was his recollections. This is what he was saying. Again, this is personal information from one man. So how true it is similar to how true a autobiography is. Again, you're getting one person's point of view of certain events. So, and that's where the author got all this information. But you also see a lot of stuff from the Native American point of view. You hear about their culture and how they believe things and how they value strength and how their hierarchy works and even how they look and what they see as beautiful. Pocahontas her head was mostly bald and she had like one braid. They frequently painted themselves for beauty in basically her entire head and shoulders were painted in red paint, and she was wearing jewelry and she was wearing earrings, and she wasn't really wearing much of anything but a loincloth, and that was pretty common for their people. So, and that's what they deemed as beautiful. So you get that different look into what we now call the Powhatan people and how they lived their lives at this moment in time, and how curious Pocahontas was of these people and their experiences. She talks about the history of the diseases that came through and the wars because the English had been coming. I mean, this is not their first interaction with the white men when Jamestown shows up. They interacted with them quite a few times before this. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. A lot of times disease comes and kills people. So it's interesting to see that history. And that really is the bulk of the book. The bulk of the book isn't their interaction. It's the lives of some of the interactions between Jamestown and these villages, what Pocahontas is hearing and seeing, her looking at the town, their viewpoints of these Englishmen, of the British who were coming with Jamestown Plantation, and what they're doing and how stupid they think they are and how filthy they think they are. Which, yeah, honestly, they were very, very stupid when it came to trying to grow land and crops and not knowing what they're doing, obviously because they died incessantly. And yeah, this was true of the Pilgrims too. That's a whole different interesting story. Maybe one day I'll cover that. Get there. But it is a very interesting book. It is very long, at least in my opinion. It can get a little dry. And of course, most of us keep waiting. It's like, when is this interaction going to happen? But you also see the interaction from Pocahontas' point of view, which comes from when I was able to skim through the Wikipedia, seems to be a misunderstanding when they were actually bringing John Smith essentially to be a member of their tribe. Her father starts off talking in the beginning how he thinks he can use them. And so he thinks they're trying to kill him. And the reality is, essentially, he's adopting him. Pocahontas' father is adopting John Smith. And essentially, that's what they're doing. And you see that from her point of view. And of course, he has an afterword of what, of course, happened to Pocahontas, what happened to John Smith, how he was, the politics of Jamestown got involved. He was nearly killed and eventually went home, and the Jamestown people told them that he was dead. And she eventually was captured during various wars, was converted to Christianity, took on the name of Rebecca and married after being baptized. They have an interesting painting. Apparently, there's a copy of it in the Capitol Rotunda in the U.S. I saw that on the Wikipedia page. I don't like that. Personal opinion. I think it's the painting of her being baptized seems insulting to the native people. It's, yes, we're converting the natives. It's a little tasteless in this day and age. You might want to move that, particularly not since it's not an original, it's a copy. It's a copy, it's not the original painting. Probably doesn't belong in the Capitol Rotunda. That's, the big circle thing of the Congress. So, but that's my opinion. But again, she marries, she has a kid, she has a son. They go to England. They live there for a while because they want to show her off. Essentially, they're trying to say, look, we have a civilized savage. She's being used as an object, even then. And she's objectified, though they try to basically say she's a princess, which in her culture, she was not. And you talk about that. She was not a princess in her culture at all. She was not allowed to inherit. She just happened to be the favored daughter of the current chief. And that was it. So, but again, that's what the English saw her as. And that's what they pulled her as. But again, she was an object. To them, she was, we have civilized these savages, which is what a lot of the Christian church kind of wanted to do. There are issues. Two Roads, which is another book by him, which I cover this month, goes over that a little bit. But that goes to the Indian schools. Different time period. So it is an interesting book. Again, you learned a little bit about what happens to her. She eventually dies. She never gets home again. She gets sick. They don't know what of. She's buried somewhere in England. I can't remember where. And then John Smith, of course, outlives her. She does run into him again, and she's embarrassed because she thought he died. And she considered him like an uncle, in a sense. No, there was no romance in Disney's weird. Not to mention, she was not like 16. She was about 11. They had no romance. She was 11. She married her husband at like 18, I think. And she died at like 21. So, yeah, he was more of an uncle. There was no romance. She, of course, did not have long black hair. Her hair was mostly bald because that's what she was. She was not of age. She was also not married. So, and the men in her tribe they shaved half of their heads so it wouldn't get in the way of the bows and arrows. So it wouldn't get tangled in the bowstring. That's why they did it. So again, it's a very interesting book. A good look at that specific native culture at this moment in time, as well as the British culture. Again, it goes into a lot of the backstories. So you get a lot of the first person account was what was going on with John Smith as he came to Virginia Plantation. Virginia already existed. So Jamestown was not the new thing. Excuse me, allergies. But again, it's a great book. Good kind of biography, good way to look at the culture. According to Wikipedia, it's about 6th to 12th grade. You could probably read it to younger kids. There's really nothing stopping you. There's no, it doesn't go into too much detail. It does obviously talk about death and the politics and stuff. So yeah, I'm going to agree with Wikipedia or Amazon in this case. 6th grade is probably right around the right age. They might be able to read it on their own. It depends on their personality and their reading level. But younger than that, they're not going to get it. They're not going to get the complexities of the politics that's going on with Jamestown, or it'll bore them, most likely, depending on, again, that's their personality. So you can determine your kid's personality, whether personal opinion, younger than 6th grade, probably not. You might be able to read it aloud, but again, it determines whether or not they'll get anything out of it. So that's really it for this review. If you like what you see, be sure to check out the rest of the channel. I have a lot of books, a lot of films. I have a little bit of travel stuff, some secular homeschooling stuff. My child is relatively young, so we're slowly building up to that. So it's coming. It's in the pipeline, but we have to get there. So leave a positive comment if you have one. And again, like and subscribe. Thank you.